2 weeks of group stage matches. It is now time to find out how the top 8 teams here at Worlds fan out as we match up to head to the quarterfinals. Now, there are a few rules and procedures we have to go over before we get to it. They're pretty straightforward. First rule is that teams that finished first in their groups respectively will be playing against teams that finished second in their group. Now, the second rule is that no 2 teams from the same group can be placed on the same half.
And as far as the order of the draw is, first we'll be drawing the top-seeded teams in their bracket positions, and then we will draw the second-place teams from those brackets, keeping in mind that if teams are placed on the same half of the bracket, they will be moved to the first available position because it violates that second rule you talked about.
All right, so now without further ado, let's meet those 8 teams who are competing in next week's quarterfinals, starting with the first-place squads. From Group A, representing Korea's ROX Tigers, Gorilla. And from Group B, representing Korea's SK Telecom T1, Bang.
Next up, representing the top team from Group C, it is H2K's Otawamne. And from Group D, representing Korea's Samsung Galaxy, it's Cube.
And on the other side of the stage, we have the second place teams from each group, starting with the representative for Albus Nox Luna, A Miracle. And from Group B, representing North America's Cloud9, Sneaky.
Next, we have representing the second place team out of Group C, Edward Gaming's Clear Love. And rounding out the final 8 teams here today, representing the LPL's Royal Never Give Up, Uzi.
Each of the team's representative had their names placed inside the bowls that are here on the stage. The top seeded teams are in Pool 1, while the runner-ups are in Pool 2. Drawing the teams into their quarterfinal matchups this year is North American star and 3-time Worlds participant, Immortals 80 carry, Wild Turtle. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's start the 2016 quarterfinals group draw. Wild Turtle, will you please do the honors of drawing the first top-seeded team?
SKT has been drawn, and they will go into the top left of the bracket.
Wild Turtle, please draw the next team.
ROX Tigers has been drawn. This means they're in the bottom left, and ROX and SKT are on the same side of the bracket, meaning if they do meet, it would be in the semifinals.
All right, Wild Turtle, please draw the third top-seeded team.
H2K will slot into the top right of the bracket right now.
And to keep it official, Wild Turtle, please draw the final top-seeded team into the quarterfinal groups.
And Samsung Galaxy will now be the final top-seeded team that has been drawn. The first seeds are set.
All right, this is where it gets interesting. That completes the first half of the draw, but before we start drawing the second half of each matchup, reminders that teams from the same group cannot be drawn into the same half of the bracket. Wild Turtle, please draw the first quarterfinal matchup.
An example of this is if Cloud9 were to be drawn right now, they would slot into the right side of the bracket since SKT is on the left. Albus Nox Luna has been drawn top left to face up against SK Telecom. What a matchup to face into. Correction. Unfortunately, there has been some confusion. The matchup, I'm waiting on clarification, I'm sorry. There is a clarification to be made. Because of what would be an invalid draw of them being on the same side of the bracket, I believe Albus Nox Luna will be playing against H2K, I'm hearing. Because Albus Nox Luna is in the same group as the Rocks Tigers, they cannot be drawn on the left side of the bracket. Therefore, they will move to the right side of the bracket. Apologies to everyone for the confusion. Therefore, Ottawamne and a Miracle will be playing in the quarterfinals.
Definitely a bit of a change, but a matchup that will surely please the fans.
And just for clarification, this is no change. This is how the draw was supposed to be doing.
Absolutely.
It was an error on our end to announce the wrong pairing. The draw is valid.
Wild Turtle, will you please draw the second quarterfinal matchup?
The team drawn is RNG. They will now play against SKT on the top left of the bracket.
Royal Never Give Up versus SK Telecom T1. Starting off here in the quarterfinals, a match that many could be seen as a final that would happen at Worlds.
Yeah, definitely a lot of individual talent heading into these games. RNG advanced after a 3-3 record. Now they face SKT.
All right, Wild Turtle, please draw the third second-seeded team.
The drawn team is EDG. They will be facing up on the bottom left of the bracket against the Rocks Tigers. Can see a big smile on Gorilla and Clearla's face. Unbelievable that they are facing up in the quarterfinals. Many people expected them to be two of the front runners in the tournament heading in, but a poor group stage performance by EDG left them as the number 2 seed, and now they draw the Rocks Tigers.
It has been interesting. People come into Worlds winning, and it took a lot for teams to find that muster again coming into the group stages. Wild Turtle, keep it official. Let's draw our last quarterfinal matchup.
And just to make it official, Samsung Galaxy will play Cloud9 in the final quarterfinal matchup we have drawn. Samsung a number 1 seed. All 3 Korean teams were number 1 seeds in their group, and Sneaky from Cloud9, the only North American team to make it to the quarterfinals.
A lot of SKT fans in the last game here at Worlds group stage, and now Cloud9, as you say, face off against Samsung Galaxy. Now that all the teams have been drawn, take a look at one of these matchups one more time. We see SKT versus RNG, EDG versus Rocks. As I said before, a lot of times you can say, we figured this would be a final matchup, but we're seeing it in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, just some unbelievable draw there with Rocks and EDG getting drawn together. Also, H2K versus Albus Nox Luna, one of those teams now. Many people had counted them out before the tournament even happened. One of those teams will be making it to the semifinals.
Absolutely ridiculous. It's going to be an amazing quarterfinal stage. You can catch these 8 teams take to the Rift in the 2016 World Championship quarterfinals when it kicks off Thursday, October 13th at 3 p.m. Pacific time from the historic Chicago Theater. Now to wrap up the group stage and preview the knockout stage, let's throw it back to the analyst desk.
Thank you very much, Rib. With the bracket locked in, we're going to take a look at the matchups, but first, an update on the rising stakes in the fight for the Summoners Cup. It's time to check in on the state of the fan contribution to the World's 2016 prize pool. As a reminder, 25% of Championship Z and Ward Skin sales go directly to the World's prize pool. With just 3 weeks to go until the finals in Los Angeles, fans have nearly doubled the initial prize pool, contributing over $2 million. We'll bring you an update on the grand total of the prize pool ahead of the finals. Now, for more details about the World's prize pool, click on over to lolesports.com. So, gentlemen, as the stakes raise, and with the group stage complete and the quarterfinals draws locked in, let's take another look at our World's 2016 top 8. We've got SKT versus RNG. We've got Rocks versus EDG. H2K versus ANX. And of course, Samsung Galaxy versus C9. So right off the bat, I just want to know which matchups you guys are excited for before we start breaking them down.
I mean, just basing on the names, you know, you have to look on the left side first with SKT versus RNG and Rocks Tigers versus EDG. If we look at how the teams have actually been playing so far, then I'm not as excited to watch like an EDG and RNG in the quarters, because I think the Korean teams here are going to be heavy favorites to take this one.
I mean, of course, with 3 Korean teams in those 1 seeds, it was very likely that we were going to get 2 China versus Korea matchups, and that's exactly what we got. But as you mentioned, you know, somewhat of a wild cards there in those Chinese slots, those number 2 slots with RNG or EDG. And we have a lot of questions about weaknesses that they can shore up over the next week leading up to those best of 5s.
And the Korean teams just look so solid. I mean, what I'm excited for is watching Samsung in particular. They were able to just dismantle people, 2 back-to-back 24-minute games. You can't really get better than that at the world stage, and it's a really tall order for Cloud9, a really shaky team that we saw today. And if they can just go toe-to-toe in at least some of the early games, I'm going to be really happy to see those results.
Yeah, I think actually Samsung is the winner of this entire group draw, because people look at H2K Albus and say, wow, okay, H2K was super lucky, they got Albus and they should be able to win. That obviously can be a difficult matchup for them to play, but the reason I think Samsung is the big winner here is because the other 2 big Korean powerhouses who's been playing the best League of Legends are on the other side of the bracket. So I actually think Samsung is the favorite on their side to make it all the way to the final.
See, in saying that, Rox Tigers, if you're going to draw a Korean, is lost against Albus Nox and lost the early game a second time against Albus Nox. For a team like EDG that plays so heavily around the bottom side of the map, and for a team like Rox Tigers that plays so heavily around the top side of the map, I actually think that this is the best that EDG could have hoped for after digging themselves into the hole that was getting 2nd seed in their group. It was never going to be good, but at least getting that volatile matchup means that there is now a hope that they sneak through.
I mean, it is a good point, considering that as EDG was in H2K's group, it was an impossibility for them to draw them as a number 1 seed. So between the 3 Korean teams, I would say, for myself personally, I would be most happy playing against the Rox Tigers based on their group stage performance, which is crazy because coming in, it seemed like a no-brainer that this team was who was going to run to the final.
And I mean, when you look at it, EDG should have 2 winning matchups. Pawn should be able to take it to Kuro in the mid lane. Bottom lane should be in favor of Deft Mako, because they are very heavily laning focused. They're better team fighters, I think, on the side of Rox Tigers, and we've seen that.
I have to disagree.
I love it. We're getting fired up. We're getting fired up.
The top side, though, Mouse against Smeb,
that's a horrible watch. Don't even
that's
talk
going to
about
be
that.
not even close. I feel like just Smeb is going to run him over and then just use his remains to take over the entire of the team. Smeb has been, while not as expected of the caliber of a top laner that you would have hoped for from the number 1 player at World, I think he's still miles above Mouse and should be able to just easily carry it.
But he should have been miles ahead of a lot of the other top laners in his group as well.
He has another week.
Physio in here. Hold up. I will direct the physio, please.
Thank you. We get into a BO5 now, and I think EDG's advantage in those 2 lanes you mentioned is nowhere near big enough to make up for Smeb versus Mouse and top lane. And also, I think Peanut, when it comes to the early game, is going to have a much bigger impact than an underperforming Clearlove right now. So I actually think Gorilla and Prey are going to be okay in the 2v2 bottom side. I think Kuro is more than fine in the mid lane as well, just honestly not trying to win his lane. And then they're going to have so much pressure coming from top side. I think Rox Tigers are actually pretty happy with going against EDG because the top side is so weak.
I think they are as well. Don't get me wrong. I'm saying if you are EDG and you can't be on H2K's side of the bracket, which they can't, you either choose between SKT, which you notoriously match poorly against, or the Rox Tigers. You take the Rox Tigers in that regard if you are EDG.
It's
you
a
have to
lesser
beat
of 2
them both
evils
to get to the final. But as far as it goes, that is the matchup they wanted.
All right, another matchup that I do want to talk about, you touched on just for a half a second, the H2K versus Albus Nox matchup, because one of these 2 teams is making it to the semifinals. And although you mentioned it's probably H2K's lucky day, or they'll be happy at least with their draw, I would have to say that once again, if we're looking at that team as one that can either overperform or perform at their optimal level, or just on the same day perform at 25%, that Albus Nox would be just as happy pulling them out of the hat.
I think Albus is super happy. Like, this was exactly the team they wanted to face if they wanted to make it into a semifinal. For that exact reason, I think going against SKT, Rox, Samsung, you know, all 3 teams, we expect them to show much more prepared. And I think H2K and Albus are actually both happy at the moment because this is like the best kind of matchups they could get. The problem for H2K is I think Samsung later on is going to be super, super difficult.
You can't use my argument back against me. I mean, I just said the exact same thing. H2K should smash ANX in this matchup.
You know it was a good group. You know it was a good quarterfinal draw when you guys are fired up about it. The last matchup I want to talk about just because I got to push us forward.
What happened?
I want to push us forward to Samsung Galaxy and Cloud9 because, again, we looked at Samsung Galaxy. You already mentioned it. They look terrorizing when you're coming out of this second week of play.
Yeah, I mean, we criticized the bottom half of all the groups as like, oh, every group was relatively weak, but I felt like Samsung was the best one at just disposing trash faster than anyone else. Those games were so quick and they're just so good at League of Legends and their champion pools are just so random, especially in the mid lane with such a massive pool. It's very difficult to target man and actually put him on something that isn't relevant. And just Crown in general has such a field day in all these games that I think that against Cloud9, it's a really tough match.
Right, so now I'll ask you, are there any redeeming factors about this matchup for Cloud9? Is there a window or a way to victory for them in a best-of-5 series? That's the key.
Cuvée has shown inconsistency in the past, is the only thing I will say. In the past, he's looked pretty solid at this tournament. He looked solid all through a regional run. Maybe, you know, that is something that they can look to exploit with their veteran in Impact, but honestly, that's like grasping at straws.
Yeah, I can see C9 match in the early game for sure, but I think Samsung's late game is miles ahead of C9. So it's going to be one of those games where you look at the first 25, 30 minutes being the decider for C9. If they go further into the games, I think Samsung will take it. So all in on early game, and C9 might have a chance, but I think Samsung is going all the way to the final.
All right, well, the bracket is set, so tune in next week as the chase for the Summoners Cup continues live from Chicago. Wednesday at 5 Pacific, join Riv, Freak, and the rest of the PTL crew for another special Worlds edition of Primetime League. Thursday, quarterfinal action kicks off at 3 Pacific when Samsung Galaxy takes on Cloud9. And remember to stick around after tonight's show for Worlds Tonight, featuring Shocks, Kobe, and Crumbs. That's going to do it for us here at the Bill Graham Civic Auditorium. On behalf of us at the desk and the entire live broadcast crew, I'd like to thank the fans in San Francisco and around the world. We'll see you in Chicago as the 2016 League of Legends World Championship continues.
The crowd in this venue has honestly just been amazing. The noise that they can pump out has been great.
You guys know where, like, NA's last hope of Worlds?
Yes.
Holy shit.
No flash, and who do they give the kill to? It's gonna go over to Sneaky. First blood into Cloud9 against SK Telecom T1. They find Blankets, 1 kill already though on to Smoothie. A kill back on the wall, both supports dead. Duke running away, picked off, but a double kill for Faker. It's back and forth, chaotic. Sneaky getting caught out, he's in danger. He could go down, then he does. Blank is on a rampage, 2 for 0. Now a double kill for Bang, make it 3 already. Meteor's gonna lose it. The defending world champions move on to 3-1 in the group. The stun was already used by NMD. Oh, he juked back into it, and the flash to save. Mechanically perfect from Meteos. A 3 versus 5. What are they going to get? Maple with a triple, killing absolutely everyone. That is an ace, and Cloud9 are falling apart. On a rampage going crazy. Gonna find a Voidless, but bucket time for all that. Oh, Voidless. Leaps forward, they're onto Jinzhao, ace in the Hogget channel, but he gets bumped by the hammer.
Knees weak, arms are heavy. There's vomit on his sweater already.
Mom spaghetti.
Whack, Sneaky gonna wall winning, Ignite is down, Sneaky, few more autos, and there's first blood. Sneaky getting low, Amazing J coming in there, but Sneaky does take him out, flashes out to safety, and now Rogue's in trouble as Jinzhao cleans up Impact finally on the front line. Avoid this, gonna get locked up here as well, and here comes Sneaky. Cloud9 finally advantage in the fight for once.
Meteos trying to look for another. There's the realm warp.
Warping onto Athena, that's gonna block up. Sneaky destroys him.
Well, thank you for all the support, and yeah, we'll advance. Don't worry about it.
Faker still moving out, does not go down, and Bangy now gonna surge forward. SKT, a beautifully orchestrated play. He doesn't know what to do. He kills Faker, but Bang blows him up as well. But SK Telecom will secure first, will show themselves moving into Chicago, and push Cloud9 through to the quarterfinals.